To an episode that's all about horses and hunting. Our four horsemen shooting from the hips are a handsome thoroughbred Jimmy Carr, a magnificent stallion Dara O'Brien, a well-bred filly Claire Balding, and My Little Pony Alan David. Their buzzers are all horsey too. Jimmy goes. Dara goes. Claire goes. And Alan goes. Well, let the horseplay commence. How did the horses of New York City kill 20,000 people in the year 1900?
Were they contagious?
They were not themselves contagious.
Did they poo out something contagious?
Well, yes, manure, of course.
Well, manure isn't in and of itself contagious.
No, that's why
My mum used to run out on the street and scrape it up into my dad's hat. No, into...
Horse manure is actually, as manure goes, I think rather less offensive than...
It is, isn't it?
Yes, I mean,
not...
dog really smells, but horse...
Dogs are the enemy.
Smells, I think, quite nice. I was
So
always
you're
told...
saying, have we got favourite poos now?
Yes.
I knew this was going to be the game. This show's changed. My favourite poo, dog poo, horrible.
Yeah.
Horse poo,
Lovely. When I first went to school, though, I was told that I smelt of horse poo.
Oh, really? So you grew up amongst horses?
I did, yes.
And as you know, they do indeed produce excreta. And in London and other places, taxis and buses were all pulled by horses. And there were, in London alone, 50,000 horses just in the public transport system. And each one of those produces an enormous amount of poo. New York City, 2.5 million pounds of it every day. It was becoming an epidemic problem. Not only was there that problem, they were also dying. About 41 a day, on average, died while working in the streets, and they preferred to leave them to putrefy because they were easier to carve up and destroy. So what we're talking about is huge quantities of manure. I mean, absolutely epic, gigantic quantities, which were vectors for all kinds of diseases.
Someone told me a fact about early cinema. You know the kind of classic comedy thing of tripping over on a banana peel?
Yeah.
But that was... the reference was tripping over on horse manure. But when they first made movies, they wanted people to fall over because they wanted to show that experience because it's a funny thing to see in the street, people falling over and hurting themselves. Obviously hilarious. But they didn't want... They felt like horse manure was a bit kind of cheapened the kind of cinema because this was art. So the banana peel just became a kind of go-to. But everyone understood it at this time. It was a banana peel. But that was in place of horse manure.
I have always wondered, because, like, no one has ever fallen on a banana peel. No one ever slid on a banana peel. No one... Presumably the only person... You're kidding. The one person...
That is a commitment to comedy, Alan.
Was this in comedy school or once you graduated?
That was in Chapel Market in Islington.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a fruit and veg market.
Well, it's a likely place to find such a thing.
I did actually tread on a banana, and you really go. I mean, they are incredible. I didn't go right on my bum, but I did go, whoa, and I looked down, there's a banana.
You did the whoa thing.
But apparently it's...
If somebody had been looking down and out, would you have gone past in that kind of, oh, kind of way?
Yes, yeah, all of that.
Yeah. Was someone carrying a pane of glass at the time?
Yeah.
To me, to you.
So horses were obviously the major form of transport in the major cities of the West.
So where did they move? Where did they bring it to? Where did they bring the poo to? Did somebody roll it into a corner?
Well, the problem was, in the early 19th century, it was extremely valuable as a fertiliser, but by the time...
Didn't they call it black gold?
It had been, but by the time you get to 1900, there's so much of it that it's like any commodity in economics, it's virtually valueless. So you can grind it down when it's dry into a powder. Very fine powder indeed. And William Herschel, the astronomer, he used it for his speculum, the curved, polished mirror in the making of the mould for it. He used ground-up horse manure, so it did have some uses. But basically, by the time we're talking about, traffic is much more dangerous than cars, horses, because horses themselves can bolt and, you know, drag people off with them and trample them. The noise in the city was unbelievable. The iron hoofs on the cobbles was almost unbearable. You could never have a conversation on the street. And this poo that was transmitting typhus and typhoid and cholera and goodness knows what else, all kinds of unpleasant things. And what it is that the motor car, it seems peculiar to us, was an environmental saviour. It made the traffic safer, better, less smelly, faster. It was just like the answer to the city's prayers.
Did Jeremy Clarkson put you up to it? It has that kind of ring about it.
It does, and it sounds like hooray for the
City.
car. We do know that the car, of course, does have its drawbacks, but it's a lot less dangerous. It's about 7 times more dangerous to have horses in the city than a car, just statistically speaking.
Wow.
And people have pointed out, of course, that traffic now is about as fast as it was in the days of the horse. But they fail to point out that, of course, there's a lot more of it. So, in fact, modern transportation is certainly more efficient. So, before the First World War, the big environmental issue of the day was horse manure, which filled up the streets as fast as it could be cleared away. What are the advantages and disadvantages of guide horses for the blind?
Well, I'm going to say the obvious one is the fact that it could give you a lift. If you've got a guide dog, you have to walk with it. If you've got a guide horse, you'd be crazy not to climb on, wouldn't you?
It's a thought. That's not how they're used, but they do exist.
Take me to the shops.
Yeah. You are aware they exist, though. Did you know that?
I wasn't aware they
I can't imagine it.
I
It's a
didn't know
nice
they
surprise. You didn't know? No. They use these miniature horses as guide horses.
But hang on, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
other
Does a
blind-
blind
horse-
person walking a Shetland pony?
It's smaller even than a Shetland pony.
Oh, okay, and
is
even
it-
smaller. But is the blind person must be aware of the people whispering, "Oh God, somebody's nicked their dog."
You can see how small they are.
Oh, well, it's a falabella then. It's even smaller.
Exactly. It's
tiny
very,
one.
very small. And
Toy.
there are many bigger dogs than that. Anyway, what are the advantages of a horse rather than a dog?
Well, the poo's much nicer, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's nicer.
it's cooler, you know.
It's cooler.
It's cooler, you know. You got a falabella pony, for God's sake. You got a tiny miniature pony.
Well, it looks hard. doesn't
Bragging
it? You know.
rights.
It could carry us shopping on its back.
Yeah. Shopping on its back is
Carry it or pull a little trolley as well. They're
Yeah.
quite good at hardy pulling
Some
animals.
people, not many, are allergic to dogs. I would say more people are allergic to horses,
I would have
but
thought-
probably if you're allergic to dogs, you may not be allergic to horses.
It might not go and shag the leg of every passerby.
Very helpful.
If it does, though, it'd be more of a problem.
They do have very good memories as well, horses.
Do they?
Yeah, they do. Very good memories. It's usually it's a panicky memory, connected with something that was genuinely painful or distressing for them, and they'd never forget it. It can be the smallest little...
So they would remember the way to the shops if they were particularly frightened by the way to the shops some time ago, and you could just go,
That would be a
and the horse would immediately go to the shops.
That would indeed be a disadvantage. They're flight animals rather than
Yes.
pack animals,
Yeah,
and
no-
so they can spook.
And therefore, but also it means they're not aggressive, so they wouldn't chase anything. They wouldn't chase a cat. They wouldn't chase a rabbit.
No,
They would
exactly.
be very.
So when they come
docile.
round on the second lap at Aintree and they come to Beecher's Brook, do they not just go, "I remember this one"? There's a long way down on the other
They're
side.
not going to do that one.
But quite often they do. If they scare themselves, the third fence in the Grand National is the first big frightening one, big open ditch, and if they scare themselves over that, game over. You know you're not going to get round. And quite often, if you take a horse back to Aintree and it's frightened itself first time it was there, no way.
And like, is it any member of Aintree, if they hear like a Scouse accent, do they begin to get slightly more nervous? You know, if they're watching Hollyoaks, do they begin to fresh?
It's when they see the girls in the really short
In the
dress, they
short
go, "Oh my God, I've been
dresses,
here before."
I'm not... The poor horses are scared, but the poor blind people being dragged along behind them.
Well, that would be bad. But the another advantage, and it's a big one, is simply the relationship that you have with your animal is longer.
Because they live, what, 30 years or something?
20, 30 years, as opposed to a dog, 8 to 12 years. So that's a very, very strong advantage. Another one is simply their stamina is greater than dogs, of course.
But can you house train a horse like a
Well,
dog?
oddly enough, you can. I mean, not as well as a dog, it must be said,
Occasional
but
accident.
pretty well. The disadvantages in restaurants tend to have a policy of no horses, or at least they don't have a positive yes to horses policy. And also the other disadvantage is if you go into a bar or somewhere where a dog is welcome, the dog can curl up and go to sleep, or go under the table. You won't get a horse.
Chatting up other horses.
I just got to do the black now.
Okay.
You go home, I'm going to stay.
That would happen, I feel. They're slightly less able to blend into the background, shall we say. So, are horses sleeping? Do you know how often do horses sleep?
They tend to sleep during the day, and they would never sleep soundly asleep like a dog does.
No. How many hours do you think they sleep?
I would say that they'd sleep in fits and starts, so maybe 5 minutes of every hour. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if there's a race on, that's a disaster, isn't it?
Well, it is.
Halfway round, I'll tell you what, though.
Fancy kid.
So what time does it start? 3:15? Oh, I'm no good for that.
Yes, it's about 3 hours in 24 they sleep.
They tend to sleep standing up because, obviously, having been, you know, they would have been preyed upon. And therefore they've got to be ready for flight at any second.
Yeah.
And they are rubbish at getting up, aren't they?
Yeah.
When they've been lying down?
Yeah.
Well, particularly if they get too close to the wall, and if they get too close to the wall, they get stuck, and they call it getting cast.
Oh, dear.
They get stuck like a video game character. Like, I know one of these kind of things. If you occasionally in a video game, a badly written video game, you can find yourself trapped in a corner and you can't...
Oh, yes.
Clara hasn't played video games since the 80s.
Yeah, very good. And what can't horses do that almost every other mammal can do?
I don't think they can vomit.
Exactly right, take some points.
And that's why they get that weird thing where they die.
Yes.
Colic.
No one quite knows why they can't. It seems evolutionary a mistake, but they just can't vomit.
Can't get the old hoof down the throat.
What is a hoof exactly?
Why is it what?
No, this is the hoof. It's
Nail.
like one thumb. Like a big thumb with a gnarly-looking nail on it. And then someone's clearly looked at it and gone, no, you've been walking around too. Like thousands of years ago, someone looked at that and went, that looks a bit sore. Maybe if we nail a bit of metal to it.
Dogs really like eating the bits. When the farrier comes and he shaves off bits of the hoof, the dogs actually love to eat that. Really really nice.
Dogs eat anything.
Well, yes.
Dogs will be at the other end going for the manure.
They would, and they do.
So, talking of dogs, how does it work when a blind person with a guide dog wants to cross the road? Does the dog say when it's clear, as it were, and make the decision to cross the road?
I hope so.
You hope so. Well, oddly enough, it doesn't. It's the blind person who makes the decision.
And the dog keeps stopping him.
The dog has the ability, it's trained what's called selective disobedience or intelligent disobedience. The dog will overrule if it must, but otherwise it's up to the master or mistress, as it were, to initiate it. And it's all done through the feeling of the harness. So when the dog gets to the other end, it puts its paws up on the curb, which alters the angle of the harness, and the blind person feels that, knows where the curb is.
They are incredibly well trained. My uncle, Harry, takes in guide dogs. So when they fail the guide dog test, when they're not quite good enough, he has one.
Oh, that's right.
So he sort of takes them in, but he was showing me one of his dogs, which was a magnificent creature. And what it would do, just to show how good it was, he would send it out to pee, and it would come in, and then he'd send it out again. And you see it go out, and you see its little face going, I've got to force one out. I can't come back in till I've done a little wee.
And how long have humans been using dogs for blind people specifically? Do you know when it started?
I bet it's going to be like...
1806,
I reckon it's going to be Roman. I reckon it's...
Yeah, absolutely right.
It's always Roman, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you not seen this show before? It's always Roman.
There's a 1st or 2nd century AD mural at Herculaneum, which shows quite clearly that it was in use then. And with the proper school, the first school for seeing eye dogs, as Americans call guide dogs, when would you imagine and why?
Maybe it was after the First World War.
Very good.
A lot of blindness.
Because of the gas and things caused a lot of blindness. It was actually the Germans who had the first one in World War I.
They had the top dogs for it.
And in Britain it started to take off in the 30s, but it was members of the public hated it, and it caused a lot of fuss. Why do you think?
I don't know.
Because were they using German Shepherd dogs?
No, it wasn't that. That's a good point. There was a lot of anti-German feeling, of course, during the First War. No, they thought it was cruel to the dog. And they would berate the trainers and the users, saying, you can't do that to a dog, because it's just bizarre. They seem to have that rather British view that anything you do with an animal that isn't normal, it must therefore be cruel, which it
And yet they'd been
at all.
racing horses since 17 whatever or before, and that was just fine.
Do you remember what happened with Blue Peter?
Collecting milk
It was
bottles.
milk bottle tops in the days of milk bottles and delivery.
Happy
Silver
days.
milk. And it was 22 million milk bottle tops to train one dog. and the children of Britain
Trained one dog.
trained one dog. But it's still made a happy blind
It's
person.
really well trained, though.
He was sick of milk, though, at the end of it.
Anyway, good. Well done, everybody. Miniature horses can be trained as guides for the blind, though they have significant disadvantages, and you're probably better off with a dog. How would you use one of these to calm a horse down?
Oh, is this
Now, calm it down.
Yeah.
With what I'm thinking, I'm not going to calm it down.
Well, in the long run, it
we know
might.
one as well.
Have these been used? Because if they're what I think they are, I don't think I want to touch it.
They've been scrupulously
It
clean.
would only have been on a horse. And
Is it something over its nose, over its snout?
Yeah.
Is it
Goes that far, gets that big.
on the tail?
You fire an arrow at the horse.
Well, the points have gone to Alan.
Tastes weird.
Alan's identified where it goes. They're not the full number of points. But,
Where does it go? Where?
oh, yes, Claire.
it's a twitch.
It's a twitch. She knows. She knows. You know.
Well, she,
now
of course
explain.
she knows. She, Claire Ball.
Yes, of course. She's here
I
expressing.
couldn't let Alan get any more of it. I thought, oh, yeah, I'll give it a go. And then he was like, nearly right.
Yeah, they are. So imagine you have to give medication.
Oh, it is. It's like, here, I'll do that. Here, I'll do.
She's calming me.
Whose line is it anyway from like 10 years ago?
Imagine you're giving a horse a medication or something. They're very nervous animals, and they don't like being fiddled around with any more than anyone else. But the trouble is, when they are uncomfortable, they can hurt themselves as much as they can hurt a vet or anyone attending them, because they strike out. So you need to calm a horse down. And there's a very magical thing about horses. It's most peculiar. And what is it, Claire?
If you take their top lip,
Yeah.
and basically you can do it with your hands and you can do it with a bit of
Yeah.
rope. This to me looks a little bit severe. I've never seen one
there it
quite
is.
like this. And you basically take their top lip and they won't move.
They just go into a state of almost
And it doesn't,
trance-like...
yeah. And it's a bit like the old rabbits in the headlight freeze. It makes them go completely.
Yeah. And then you can...
Yeah, like that.
You can administer a...
That's he's
it,
gone.
Alan is a horse. Yeah.
Go with the drugs now, go with the drugs.
You don't need them now.
You can sing at the same time. And actually, with some, you can take
Yeah.
their ear and it has the same effect.
Yeah.
How did they find that out?
Well, you know...
There's been a lot of experimentation going on. Well, I suppose we'll try that went badly. Let's try the lip now.
It was thought originally that it was almost that it was a distraction, and that, you know, it was like if you did that, it couldn't concentrate on something else happening to it. But it was discovered that it releases endorphins. It just gets blissed out. It's rather nice to know, because it looks a bit cruel there.
I'm fine.
That's good. But they're not the only animals. Bovines also have this thing, and we bred a breed of dog to bring down bulls by jumping up at them and grabbing them by the lip, and it would pull them down, and we called them
Bull Mastiff.
bulldogs, actually.
Oh, bulldogs.
Actual bulldogs. You know, oh yes, Churchill-type dog.
Gone somewhere in that picture.
That one, they're
in the training, wasn't
they're being trained.
That's probably I'd imagine that's why he went into insurance, to be honest. It was a safer field for him to be in.
But I dare say bull mastiffs were probably trained to do it as well.
But how do you persuade the dog to do that for the first time?
It's
You
weird,
Go for the
isn't
lip.
it?
Go for the
Just
lip.
put a bit of biscuit on.
Yeah, good idea.
You rest the biscuit on the lip. How you get it onto the lip is you need
And now
another
you
dog.
breed
That's
in
it.
so quickly. You breed in these characteristics. I mean, some of the breeds were just like only yesterday virtually came. I mean, like 100 years, you can get a completely new kind of dog which will do weird things like go for the upper lip of a bull. Weird. There's another thing you may like to know. That's when you calm a horse down, but sometimes you might want to get a horse more active. For example, if you're a horse dealer and you've got a knackered old nag, a jade, you might want them to look coltish and spring-like. Yep. How do you do the opposite then? How do you...
Why? Just hit him in the nads?
Not there, a little bit further back even. We're talking bottoms.
Oh, really? In the bum?
Yes, but what in the bottom? That's the key.
Oh, is it?
Well, anything really is going to get you a very...
I think it's more the act of putting it in there.
Ice cube.
Ice cube would be good. That would be good. The favoured
Or
thing...
a popsicle.
You take...
Sounds like there might be a story here, Alan.
It is
Take you back to the hot
stuff.
summer of '76.
We're almost out of popsicles again.
What were the milk ones called? I love the milk ones.
Oh,
You
milky.
know, the milk...
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Milk,
yeah.
you know what I
But for
mean.
purely normal
Yes,
consumption.
purely for
Assuming, yes?
what I do.
In a normal
Yeah,
way.
I don't think when it comes
Claire,
to-
in a normal way, you like them.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, good. Just
I,
check.
I really don't think flavour is a major issue when you're talking about the ones to show up your arse.
I'll tell you what is an issue, the Calippo.
It's taken the wrong way, though. You know, it comes out thick and then goes thin. You can't, you know...
Depends which way you start your Calippo.
You can start the Calippo.
Yeah. Novice.
Well, it's disappointing to discover that, in fact, it's nothing to do with any kind of ice cream confection whatsoever. But we are in the right channel, the right passage. And it is a foodstuff.
Ginger?
Ginger is the right
God,
answer.
I didn't know that. It was a
yeah,
guess.
ginger. You literally ginger them up. You
Just that it was a bit hot.
pop ginger at the bottom, and they spring about, and they look lively, and it takes 10 years off them.
So, in other words, in a really good episode of How to Look 10 Years Younger...
Yes. Exactly.
Believe you could do that one with the glass. I don't like her. You just...
Couple of ginger snaps.
Yeah. That's it.
No, don't eat them.
No.
Someone up there likes a ginger snap. I love ginger snap.
Is it legal, like, in horse racing? If you were horse racing, it's the Derby or whatever, you know, the Grand National, could you just throw some ginger up?
I think that would be counting as nobbling.
Well, I don't know whether it's on the banned list.
Really? That's
I don't
interesting.
know. I'll have to check it. I'll check.
What about
Please do.
Calippos?
Calippo's probably have got something...
The ginger
in there.
Calippo, that's going to change.
Oh. So, yes, you can calm a horse down by grabbing hold of its upper lip, then rev it up again by sticking a bit of ginger up its rectum, which is nice. So, which of these men here, the two men you see, well, three in fact, which one just held up a stagecoach, used bad language in front of a lady, drinks whiskey, and chases people from right to left?
The one with the black hat.
Is the right answer. So what is the history of this? Why do you think?
I don't know. Is that it then? Black hats for bad guys
Yeah.
and white hats for good guys?
And unshaven, and there's even a direction they cross the
I
street.
just remember being a kid and every Saturday night, usually there'd be a Western on BBC.
Yeah.
And my dad would helpfully point out, that's the bad guy there. The one who's angry.
In the 50s, it was 8 out of 10 of the top 10 programmes on prime time national American television were Westerns. The only two that weren't were comedies. It's just extraordinary.
Carried
It
on. We
ruled.
grew up with Alias Smith and Jones and Champion the Wonder Horse.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a bit of a letdown, Champion the Wonder Horse, because it was a great title sequence.
Champion the Wonder Horse.
Whee! That's
Great
kind of all he
idea.
did, really,
In
wasn't
the
it?
end, you know, he's a horse.
If
so-
it cut to Champion bringing a blind person shopping, that would be a significantly better show than what he did.
He
right?
never used it in much more than knock a door down by kicking
Yeah.
it. That was sort of his
That was kind of his thing,
shtick.
like,
Had they known, they'd just put one of these on his top lip and he's useless. Come on, Champion! Oh, da, da.
But it's really practical, partly because you've got a small black and white television in those days, with not necessarily the high res that we expect in our digital age. And so you can just see the black hat and the white hat, and you know who's... And there are lots of chases, who's riding after whom. You instantly know which is the goodie and the baddie. And also, the right-to-left business is quite crucial, that the baddie goes this way, which in screen terms is... right to left, right, and the goodie goes left to right, which means his gun is favoured, is facing the camera. Well, this is useless for anybody under the age of 50 with no idea what we're talking about. It's a peculiar, elderly nostalgia show on
Why
Westerns.
don't
But
any of these surely have all the plethora of channels? There could just be one Western channel just with these old programmes going on all day.
That's true.
Casey Jones I'd like to have on, Champion of the Wonder Horse,
Yep.
Alias Smith and Jones. Just on a...
You could just
too
call
much
it...
to
You
ask?
could be a channel called Alan.
Alan, there's Dave, why not Alan?
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
that's a much better channel.
Just all the things that
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have bloody QI on all
you like.
of
Yeah.
Horse operas, they're sometimes called, aren't they, Westerns? But do you know what insiders call them in Hollywood?
No.
Oters.
Oat.
Oters, as in horses eating oats, I guess. They're known as oters. Yeah. So, yes, horse operas come and go. They may be simple, but at least you know where you stand. So, name and shame America's most wasteful hunters.
Is it Buffalo Bill? And because he killed the bison, did he? But they wiped them out.
Almost wiped them out, yes. From being the most populous herd species of its kind in America, 70 million of these, they went down to almost zero. I mean, it was horrific what they did in terms of the extermination of, not just of the bison, but there was, I'm afraid, a very strong element to the policy of killing them all, that they were therefore also controlling the Indian population because they were getting rid of their main source of food. So it was a kind of ethnic cleansing. If they got rid of all the bison, then they would be getting rid of the Indians as well.
Did they think that, or was that just a...
Yeah,
Really?
some of the things they did. They distributed smallpox-infected blankets to the Lakota Sioux people.
Did they?
Yeah. But, in a sense, having portrayed the American Indian as the victim, which it obviously was, of our aggression or of the European aggression, it's also true that you could say they were the most wasteful killers of bison, because for thousands of years, the way they killed bison was really quite bizarre. Do you know how they did it? We're trained to sort of think of them as all at one with nature and simple, perfect people who...
Didn't they get them to run off things?
They did. They did that. They get the whole herd to stampede over a cliff, and you can see sort of two angles of it there as well.
That must have been... I know that's a horribly, horribly cruel and terrible way to go if you happen to be a bison, but that must have been a magnificent sight.
It must have been an extraordinary sight to see
So
this. But it was
thousands and
incredibly
thousands.
wasteful because it was more than they could eat, and it would suppurate, and they'd just take what they could. Sometimes they only wanted the tongue or the hump, which they valued very highly. So, in a sense, you could argue that some of the Plains Indians were the most wasteful, although then, oddly enough, we made them better killers of bison, or at least less wasteful, because we brought something over to America which they found very nice.
Cows?
Was it guns?
Well, horses.
What, they ate horses?
No, they rode them and then hunted from horseback.
Oh, okay.
And they were able to hunt individual bison rather than use this mass extermination.
Were there not any horses knocking around America before?
No.
That's quite a pair of trousers they're both wearing, by the way. I can't help noticing that's fairly...
It's the things you can do with hide.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could finish
Slap
off your
your
trousers,
thigh.
what you could do at hides. It does look like they're
It's a
on the
sexy
way to a
look.
club.
Yes, it's a fight. Anyway, it's interesting. Sorry. No, very nice. Very nice. No, it's lovely. No, it is actually lovely. So, yeah, American hunters may have killed 70 million bison in 15 years, but the Indians made a pretty good start 5,000 years before that. Now, what is this sound?
I'm going to say it's that bear. Well, in the conventions of television, if you show a picture of something with the noise over the top...
But we showed a black bear, and as you know, black bears don't roar.
Oh, no, I of course.
Yeah, so it can't have been that bear making that noise. It's probably a wolf or a lion, which is what Hollywood and indeed even documentary makers, to their eternal shame, sometimes will put on, because you see them open their mouth and you expect this roar to come and it makes it more convincing. They don't roar.
What
They
do they
barely
do?
growl.
Who's Johnny? Or
They
where?
just... Yeah, that kind of noise, probably. They don't make much of a sound.
I don't think I'd find it less frightening somehow. I think it's
Oh,
pretty
no, it's
relatively
frightening
frightening anyway to see him going. But I
They're
would be a
pretty
bit
harmless.
perplexed. That would stop me in my running away if the bear went...
You'd wait to see what they had to
Why is
say.
the bear miming?
Well, they are, many of their defenders would say they are pretty harmless. They're hunted in America. There's a hunting season for black bear, is the species. But they don't really attack people. They're not like grizzlies, which can be pretty tricky. Though they can climb trees. And they used to say that you know the difference between a black bear and a brown bear, because it's not always the colour, if you climb a tree, because the black bear will climb after you. If it's a grizzly, it'll pull the tree down and then eat you that way. So you'll know which one has eaten you.
The other way of
Very
stopping
true.
them attacking you is you just put a pane of glass in front of you.
That's miming. You were talking about their mime skills. Fabulous.
Have you got a bear walking against the wind? Have you got a bear? That's my favourite.
They don't eat us, but they eat fruit. They really love larvae, insect larvae, grubs and ants and all kinds of stuff like
Well,
that.
it is lovely, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, fabulous. Absolutely. And their strength, really, is not in order to wrestle us or fight us and their claws. It's to upturn stones and bark to get at these woodlice and things that they like to eat.
It is a bit of a comedy motif, the how do you get away from a bear. I think we've all done routines at some stage.
Or the zigzags and
the
the...
zigging and zagging, or you run downhill and then stop suddenly and it will roll past you.
Yes.
As Craig Campbell says, yeah, but now you've embarrassed the bear.
It's always that thing, and you know that someone told you either run uphill or downhill, and when it happens, you can't remember which one it is, and it rather matters to remember at the time.
Just get in your car. What are you playing at?
Yeah. You're right. Well, there you are. That's it. You see, black bears don't actually roar, so their vocal parts in films are usually given to lions and wolves. Now, we'd all like to set up a successful internet business. So how might hunting work on the internet?
Always look ahead, Jimmy. Always look ahead.
Yes.
Why were you looking
What,
there?
are you commenting on his horsemanship here? Yes. Claire, that's not him on the horse.
Oh, don't say that.
Have you not seen any doctored photographs? Because there are quite a number of them on the internet.
Internet hunting, does this ring a bell?
Are we bargain hunting? Is it eBay?
In 34 states in America, internet hunting has been declared illegal. But what is it that they're declaring illegal? What?
Sorry, internet hunt.
Yeah, hunting.
So if they got a gun set up somewhere, not really.
Like a webcam.
So you have like a webcam and a gun, and you can control the gun with it. We pay your money. You control the gun with your mouse, like golden shots or thing like that. An elk or a moose or something or person moves into in the sights. Press the
thing
mouse,
or person.
thing or the space bar or whatever it is it's set up to do, and there's your shot. And
But presumably there could be a homicide.
yes, because the fact is, it's illegal in 34 states, and yet it doesn't exist. They've legislated against something that actually doesn't exist. This man
He's
here...
got that all wrong. Straight away.
Yeah.
Get off my land! The gun is not
This
in
is
your
a Texan called John Lockwood, and in 2004 he had the idea of it and set up a site, and it was instantly ruled illegal before it had even happened or anything. And as I say, it was a huge campaign by the anti-hunting lobby in America. And the amazing thing is that the pro-hunting lobby supported them because they were seen to be all liberal and, it's awful, wicked. And so, but it just doesn't exist. And in California, they've made internet fishing illegal, which also doesn't exist.
What, it was a rod.
Presumably you
that feels
remotely
pretty
control
harmless.
from a webcam the idea of
And
fishing.
actually rather more fun, because then you can go off and do something useful while the rod just...
Anyway, there you are. Hunting on the internet isn't actually possible, but that hasn't stopped most American states from banning it. 1 million British horses were sent to the First World War front. What happened to the ones that survived?
They settled in the south of France, opened a caravan park.
Of course, they couldn't learn the language, ended up moving back.
Well, that's what they didn't do, is move back.
Did the French eat them?
Well, lots of people ate them. Probably they were turned into food or they were rendered into products. Yeah, the point is, 1 million horses is a heck of a lot, but almost none made it back home. They thought...
some did, because in War Horse he did.
Yes.
He came back. He did come back.
1 million horses
Yeah.
went to the First World War.
From Britain, yeah.
That's extraordinary. I mean, if you think about just the logistics of getting 1 million horses across the channel, I mean, they're not all David Williams.
No, exactly. According to Michael Morpurgo, who wrote that book, War Horse, you just mentioned, 8 to 10 million horses died in the First World War. And they didn't have a nice time of it, even if they did survive, because they thought they'd be diseased when they came back as well, so they just didn't want them. So it was a very sad chapter in our story.
Yeah.
It's a bummer, isn't it? I've silenced you.
It's like when they play the Black Beauty music, I just start crying. Well, you know the bit where Ginger dies? It's really, really sad.
You know what, they call him Ginger.
So I would have that music at my funeral, definitely. Black Beauty music.
It's a deal.
Would you?
I'll arrange it.
It's a deal with, yeah.
Thanks.
We'll make sure it happens.
Good.
Yeah, how fast is that coffin going to be moving? Quite a lick, by the sounds of it.
One of the most popular ones to have now with the coffin going on is the countdown theme. Like that.
It is bizarre the way people go crazy for horses, though. I remember being, like, in primary school. It was the first time I saw anyone... And it did a really weird thing. It really stuck in my head. And there was a little girl in our primary school class. We were, like, 6 years old. And she was just in floods of tears. Just crying, bawling her eyes out. And we kind of went, what's the matter? And she went, I just love horses so much.
Oh, is that how you were?
I don't see why that's strange. I had to write one of those, you know, they sometimes ask you to write things for, you know, your first love. Genuinely, my first love was Frank, and he was a pony. Who wasn't very handsome. He had brown ears and a spotty neck and a really bad sweet itch, so his mane just kind of stood up in sections. And my mother always said, if you could love Frank, then everything in the world would always be beautiful, because you thought he was beautiful. And I did.
Oh, that's so touching.
He was lovely. He understood me.
There's a whole...
He did understand me.
Why little girls rather than little boys don't care about ponies? I know families who move because the girl, you know, for the sake of, you know, having more space so that maybe they can get a horse.
Well, we're emotionally mature a little earlier.
Yeah.
Or 50 years earlier.
I would never move for a child's hobby. You know, I can see it like child go, but I love ponies. Yeah, well, I like this house, my own house. When you pay for the mortgage, you can stick a pony in every room, right?
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
All right, why are you asking?
Not your dad, all right?
All right. Thank you. So, yes, the fact is very few horses sadly made it home from the front. If they weren't killed in action, they were likely to be fed to prisoners or turned into fertiliser. And now, what are these horses thinking? Pictures behind you there. From left to right. What is it we're after here?
The one on the right's thinking, Claire Baldwin.
She loves me.
Yeah, the one of them was going, I'll be frank. It's something to do with the ears, is it?
Yes, the ears. The language of the horses and its moods is very often interpreted in its ears. Are you good on seeing that? I mean, what's your sense on the one on the left there?
The one on the left is very alert, has seen something that's slightly startled it. It's kind of a woo.
Yeah, that's kind of straight up. It's a kind of, it's...
Slightly startled. The one in the middle is very eager and keen and wanting to go forward and see something it likes.
You could do the position if you wanted.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to give you those.
So,
do you have the tail
that'll
as well?
be...
Yeah.
I'm a bit alarmed.
Right.
I'm really...
accused of the only woman on the panel is the one wearing the bunny ears. Can Jimmy wear the ears just, you know, for my living?
He doesn't know the horse ear language, whereas you do.
And then you can't... I'm not sure about sideways, actually.
Well, no, sideways, yeah, we have written down here.
flat back is obviously very scared or very angry.
No, that could mean it's moving at quite a pace.
Oh,
Wind tunnel.
What's going
under the door?
What's going on?
It's amazing. If you watch racing, you watch how many horses prick their ears as they get to the winning post.
Yeah.
Because I think if they just get the ears over quickly, it'll be...
It'll break the tape.
Yeah.
Apparently flopping sideways means that then knackered or I surrender, as it were, to another horse or a person. And then there's the flicking, there's ears flicking. You
and you go one back and one forward sometimes. Yep.
And what does that mean? What does the flicking mean?
Left.
Panic, supposedly. Yeah. Panic. And then the back, you mentioned, is angry, aggressive, upset. You don't want to be
So is this in
too
all
near
horses?
Yes.
It's a universal language of horses?
There is. You know, set their ears back is a bad
I think
sign.
I've broken this one now.
Oh, no, you have.
Violence there.
Permanently sad.
You look very sweet,
Just
my darling.
permanently confused.
And drooping sideways with one down and one up, the way you are there,
Yes.
It could be that you're on drugs, apparently.
I can absolutely assure you that I'm not.
Well, that's good. Don't with depressants or stimulants, depending on whether
one
it's...
up, one down, is it?
No, it's whether it's completely rigid or whether it's completely flat down.
Right.
Rigid would be stimulants, I think. Horses do use a lot of body language, and they talk with their ears. And now we plunge headlong into the dung heap of general ignorance to see who comes up smelling of roses. So if you put your fingers on the buzzers, what colour is this horse? Yes.
Grey.
Yeah.
White.
It's white. It's a white horse. But white, you said grey because almost all white horses are in fact known as greys to people.
And they're born very dark.
Yeah,
actually, all those horses that you see at Spanish riding school that become beautiful and white, I've been to see them as foals. Yeah. And they're born almost jet black.
Are they?
And they go grey and grey, and it's the most if you ever get the chance.
You must know that. You must have seen Crimson Tide with Gene Hackman and Denzel
Oh, yes,
Washington.
he does go on about that. Yes,
There's a
he does,
whole
you're
thing.
right,
It's a big...
Does Denzel Washington go white?
Yeah, midway through the film. Yeah, and then the thing is, but they're born black.
Yeah.
Da, da, da. It's a big kind of like verbal twist.
So, yes, white horses. If it's a thoroughbred grey, what do you know about it?
It's a bit snobby. A bit self-important. Thoroughbreds.
All thoroughbred greys are descended from one grey.
Jesus.
It was a wild stab in the dark. If it had come off, my God, you would have got points.
It would have
been so impressive. But unfortunately, it wasn't the answer on this occasion. Allcock is the answer. Allcock Arabian. All thoroughbred horses around the world are descended from... Three. Can you name them?
The Darley Arabian, the Godolphin Arabian, and the Bailey Turk.
Absolutely right. You must have points for that.
Yes, that is correct.
Arab stallions. 3 Arab stallions came over in the in the late 17th century, and they are the origins of all thoroughbred horses in racing.
What's the deal with horse names? Is that the oddest thing?
Oh, you'll have to explain.
Yeah. Well, with racehorses, you get to name your own horse, and you can't
But they're
have
never
a name.
called Dave the horse, are they? You know, we got it and we called it Possum because we like possums in our house.
But as long as there hasn't been another possum, you can have possum.
You can call it what you want.
Yeah,
So if you
well,
go
there's a
back
data-
150
yeah.
years, they are much simpler names. They
Yes.
just have to get more complicated because they have to be new.
Was Robbie Fowler named his horse Some Horse?
Yeah, he
Is that
did,
actually-
and then he had another one called Another Horse.
Another horse, yeah.
Yeah.
And Some Horse. It's brilliant, isn't it? And now there's another horse, Terry Higgins, Some Horse.
Presumably, has Sarah Jessica Parker got a horse named after her? Or? Just because she looks quite equine.
You would probably have to ask her permission if you were to name it directly after a person. You do have to ask their permission.
So, horsey people call most white horses grey, but the ones in our picture, well, that one was an actual, honest-to-goodness white horse. How many horsepower do you get from one horse?
Oh, shall I? I'll take the bullet.
You take it.
Yeah, I say about 1. How could it not be?
Well, you have to go back to the history of the horsepower. Do you know who's responsible for dreaming up? It was Watt. Yeah. He invented, or at least perfected, the really efficient first versions of steam engines. And basically, he would take a third of the efficiency saving that anyone who bought one of his machines would make over horses. So he had to demonstrate its ability to work in relation to a horse. But in order to be generous, he erred on the side of generosity. So horses can actually do slightly less than a horsepower. It's 794 watts is what it is. Now a story of horror and hostility. A shoal of piranhas meets a dolphin. What happens next?
Oh, does the dolphin eat the piranhas?
Yes, you're learning. That's good. The dolphin...
I only said that because it was the opposite of what I thought.
Yes. The fact is, this whole idea that piranhas are these aggressive, flesh-eating creatures is pretty nonsensical, actually. But it really goes back to Teddy Roosevelt, it seems. That's maybe one of the first times that people who'd never travelled to South America, he had been there, and they put on a display for him, possibly, and he rather exaggerated this idea. He'd said, if you put your arm in the water, you know, it'll be stripped to the bone by these fish. The fact is, they just don't do that. They're very frightened of humans. If you're swimming with piranhas, they'll go away. They scavenge on dead things, mostly. Yes, contrary to their reputation, piranhas are mostly scavengers, not predators, and they're actually eaten by dolphins, not the other way around. So, what weapon did 19th century whalers use to kill whales?
You're looking for a harpoon?
Yeah. No, the harpoon is used for...
Dragging it in.
It's tiring it out, really. You fire or in the early days, they threw a harpoon with a rope attached. It's barbed, so it would stick into the flesh of the beast. And then what was called a Nantucket sleigh ride would take place, where this whale would drag the whaling boat, which was quite small, as you can see, and eventually the whale would tire out. You just keep on, and you don't let go. And then when it's tired out, lances finish it off. It was a pretty extraordinary industry.
Well, there's a lot of it still going on, isn't there?
I fear there is. Of course, most nations are signatories to a ban on whaling,
But that's all sort of
notably
changing.
Norway and Japan are not.
Yeah, but Japan say it's all for research.
Yeah,
now. They're researching the perfect whale sandwich.
Yes.
And they won't stop until they've got it.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's
Delicious.
So, yes, 19th century whalers used lances to kill whales. Harpoons were used to catch them before they were killed, which brings us to our final scores. Oh, my goodness, well,
Got a
it's
good
an
feeling.
interesting one today. Falling at the first fence, I'm sorry to say, with minus 13 in fourth place, it's Jimmy Carr. And a very relieved Alan Davies, who's only made a slight foal of himself on minus 6. And just beaten in the final furlong with 4 points, Dara O'Brien. Oh, who would believe it? It's maiden stakes for her first race, and she's galloping away as a winner. 5 points, Claire Balding. It's good night from Claire, Jimmy, Dara and Alan. I leave you with this thought from Rita Mae Brown. If the world was truly a rational place, it would be men who rode side saddle. Thank you and good night.